choreographed comedic genius. Very evocative of Jackie Chan.
And it's stellar visual storytelling.
Yeah, it is. How about that?
Since I got another 9 minutes until the thing, War for the Planet of the Apes was pretty good too. And the reason I thought of saying that was because that also heavily relies on visual storytelling and emotional depth through visual cues and facial emotes, which is a big deal because a lot of that movie is people doing motion capture with CGI. And it pisses me off every time I try to talk about that and somebody like disregards it immediately, saying it's not artistic and it's not a performance, because that is what was done with that Apes movie. I don't care how the CGI looks later on. The fact that the emotion was translated to the face of a CGI monkey, and for the majority of the movie, if there was a close-up shot on a monkey, I forgot that. Wide shots, action scenes, I kind of remembered that it was like a CGI spectacle. But in that particular case, my God. I had some feels, and most of the movie was not exposition dialogue. I do feel like it's more of the same from the second one, but better, and it's a good conclusion, so I almost feel like if you had to only pick two, watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes and then War for the Planet of the Apes. Not that I disliked Dawn, I liked it a lot more than you when we saw it, but the third one makes Dawn skippable.
I liked the first one.
Yeah, I mean, the first one kind of had like a fun blockbuster tone, you know? But the War
I thought it had less of a blockbuster tone than the second one.
Yeah. Well, you mean because of the climax? Because there was a lot of build-up in that movie.
I feel like every movie tends to show their true colors in their third act. So if you want to say that is more of a blockbuster movie than the first one because of the third act, then...
The third one, there's not much action. The opening action scene is really stellar and it's actually not quite as explosive as you would think, and it actually is very important to how the rest of the movie sets up. There's really only a couple of action scenes in the movie, and they're very deliberate. The rest of it actually almost feels like, I don't want to get too hammy with my description of it, it almost feels like Spartacus in a way. It feels like this old-time classic epic, and I don't know if it's because it feels like a classic war film where it's a lot of drama and build-up to a larger action scene at the end that almost felt akin to, like, the Two Towers, but it also has a lot of interesting imagery that people kept saying like Holocaust or whatever, but it's really just kind of like enslavement and racial tension and differences and overcoming those. And
it's funny you say the Two Towers because that like set the stage for all like big battle sequences.
I know, and as much as all the big blockbuster movies try to duplicate it, nothing has come anywhere close except for maybe the first Avengers movie.
Lord of the Rings like is an achievement in film, period. Yeah. And like I've never compared it to Lord of the Rings within like the confines of that trilogy. I don't compare anything to it.
No, neither do I, which is why I specifically noted to myself that I thought Helm's Deep thinking about this Planet of the Apes.
Like you could not be like, okay, here's an example of just like another high fantasy-esque thing that like wasn't good. Like Warcraft.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna be like, well, it's no Lord of the Rings. I'm not gonna say
that
about
but that's
like,
because
anything.
you
Lord of the Rings had all the time in the world, all the budget in the world. Like it was like a totally one-time like filmmaking endeavor that will never be replicated, right?
No,
I mean, like,
never.
It was such a weird, unique thing that was...
And it's because there was so much creative passion that went behind that, and prep work. Yeah. So much prep work. And while Planet of the Apes doesn't really hit that, obviously, there's a lot of care and love that goes into the detail of those three movies, particularly with making those apes believable characters, because that's, comparatively to the original movies, it's their story. It's the story of the apes and how they evolve and how they claim this world for their own. Because the third movie leaves off where the original one would have begun if they don't go and remake it, which I'm sure they will, where Charlton Heston's character and company land back on Earth. And, you know, you fiends, you blew it up, damn you. I think that with that particular movie, it understands the scope of what it's achieving. And I think as a standalone trilogy, from that perspective of the Apes, it's probably, if I had to pick like a top science fiction trilogy, because what other science fiction trilogies are there other than Star Wars that are considered good?
Science fiction trilogy.
Science fiction trilogy, not fantasy, like real science fiction. And the fact that 3 of
The
those...
Matrix is not good, right?
No.
Okay.
Even if people were to like the first one, which I think that number is waning, those sequels are atrociously bad. There must be one that I'm not
I
thinking
understand
of.
it's like a staple in action cinema,
What's that?
but
The Matrix?
the Matrix one. But
Yeah, but it's been exceeded in what it was capable of. Where the
I
Lord of the
think,
Rings is
yeah.
unparalleled in the storytelling that it was capable of, the Matrix now appears a little shallow.
Utilization of timely resources
Yeah.
were ultimately detrimental to its longevity.
That's exactly right.
And that doesn't mean that I don't think Keanu Reeves in a big leather jacket is cool. I don't think it's cool.
It's not cool. It's not cool at all.
I get why it was important for action movies. And if it weren't for that movie, then maybe I wouldn't, be as in love with action movies.
What would those mean if it weren't for the Matrix?
If it weren't for the Matrix, then a lot of these movies wouldn't, that I love, probably wouldn't have happened.
I mean, you can never be too sure, but that's the general consensus. But we also have to blame a lot of the really bad ones as a result. So
Here's what I don't understand. Like, there's a predictability in, like, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and whatever. I don't understand why some movies get the short end of the stick from people or critics that are recycling a narrative formula, and then others are praised. My example is always like The Revenant, which has the most bare bones.
that got praised because of Iñárritu.
I know.
And because of Chivo.
I
And
know.
because Leo DiCaprio.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, like, it's a cinematographic achievement, and, like, visually it's engaging, but it is, like, the most, like, paper-thin movie.
Well, and I think that comes down to when you're trying to judge a movie and you have to determine whether it's more than the sum of its parts. I think of Guardians 2, right? Because I was talking to somebody else about it recently. And it's overstuffed because James Gunn and company who were making it, they were so in love with every moment that they were making throughout the movie that it detrimented the pacing of it. It's almost like they didn't have a whole lot they wanted to cut out or were forced to cut out. As a result, each individual scene in that movie works on its own. If you were to watch it one scene at a time, like one scene per day, you'd be like, all right, this is like a cool little mini series or something or whatever. As a 2.5 hour movie, it feels over long.
Yeah.
So that's a case where the movie is less than the sum of its parts. Each individual part is good, but the whole movie itself maybe not so much.
It becomes a real indulgent, quippy slog.
Yeah.
After a while, and
Yeah.
I didn't think it was bad. I just
Or even a trilogy of movies, right? For example, The Lord of the Rings, let's say. If you were to watch Two Towers on its own, no context, you'd be like, what the hell? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Are you done with the
video?
I've thoroughly talked about both of the movies that I saw, so...
Or do you want to do like a wrap up?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for tuning in to talk with us about the movies. I'm gonna go eat some tacos. You might have cheeseburger or something.